At 2 a.m., my stepbrother stabbed me with a screwdriver. I felt a sharp pain in my shoulder as my parents laughed. Stop exaggerating. Blood was pouring down as I sent a desperate text for help just before I passed out. What happened next shook the entire house. My name is Layla, I'm 19 years old, and I am a soldier in the United States Army, stationed at Fort Hood, Texas. My house isn't a home, it's a living hell. I live with my father, Walter, my stepmother, Judith, and my stepbrother, Christopher. And every day with them is like walking on broken glass. But what happened that Thanksgiving night was on another level. I never thought my own family could sink so low. I was on leave for a few days and came home because my father insisted. It's tradition, he said, as if that meant anything in our dysfunctional family. The house, a 2-story building on the outskirts of Killeen, always gave me a bad vibe. Walking in there was like stepping into a cage. That night, dinner was the usual disaster. Judith, with her venomous queen attitude, never missed an opportunity to attack me. My father, as always, remained silent, letting her run the show. And Christopher, already drunk before the turkey was served, looked at me with pure hatred. How's the army, Layla? Are you a general yet, or are you still cleaning boots? Judith said with a sarcastic smile as she cut her food. Christopher let out a mocking laugh, and my father didn't even look up from his plate. I'm a specialist, I replied, trying not to fall into her trap. And I'm training to be a sergeant. I had worked hard, passing tests they couldn't even imagine, but to Judith, everything I did was a joke. How nice, she said as if talking to a child. But out here in the real world, things aren't so easy. Christopher muttered something I didn't understand, but his glare said enough. I was sick of their digs, so I stood up. I'm going to my room. Thanks for dinner, I said and went upstairs before anyone could respond. My room was the only thing that kept me sane, small, with a bed, a desk cluttered with military manuals, and a window overlooking a neglected backyard. I closed the door and threw myself on the bed, trying not to think about them. It was around 2 a.m. when everything spiraled out of control. I was half asleep, scrolling through my phone, when the door flew open. Christopher was there, staggering, with a beer in one hand and a screwdriver in the other. I could smell the alcohol from a distance, and his eyes held a rage that put me on high alert. You think you're better than us, don't you? He growled, taking a step toward me. My military training kicked in instantly. I sat up in bed, ready to move if necessary. Christopher, get out of my room. You're drunk, I said, keeping my voice firm. Don't order me around, he yelled, and suddenly, he lunged at me. I felt a burning pain in my shoulder, as if a knife had been driven into me. I looked down and saw the screwdriver buried in my flesh, just below my collarbone. Blood started gushing out, staining my clothes. What are you doing? I screamed, shoving him hard. He stumbled backward but got up, laughing like a maniac. That's what you get for being so high and mighty, he said, still holding the bloody screwdriver. My blood. The pain was brutal, but it didn't paralyze me. I grabbed my phone with a trembling hand and sent a message to Sergeant Isabel, my mentor at the base. SOS, house, stabbed. There was no time for more. I heard footsteps coming up the stairs. I thought my parents would at least help me, but I was so wrong. What's going on in here? Judith said, appearing in the doorway with my father behind her. She saw the blood running down my arm, the screwdriver in Christopher's hand, and yet, Judith just crossed her arms. It's just a scratch, and you're already making a scene, Layla. He stabbed me. I yelled, pointing at Christopher, who was now sitting on the floor, laughing. My father just stared at the floor as if he didn't want to see. You probably provoked him, Judith said, shrugging. Right, Walter? My father nodded without saying a word. I couldn't believe it. My own family, mocking me while I was bleeding out. The pain was blurring my vision, but I managed to dial 911. Stab wound, I murmured to the operator before everything went dark. I woke up in the hospital to bright lights and a nurse by my side. "Are you okay, honey?" she said. "You lost a lot of blood, but you're going to pull through." My shoulder was bandaged, and every movement was hell, but I was alive. Sergeant Isabel came in shortly after, in her impeccable uniform and with a gaze that could shatter rocks. "What happened, Layla?" she asked, sitting beside me. I told her everything. The dinner, the taunts, the attack, my parents' indifference. She listened without interrupting, clenching her fists. "This doesn't end here," she said when I finished. "We're going to build a case. Everything they've done to you, we're going to document it. They are not getting away with this." She gave me a notebook and a pen. "Write down everything you remember. Every insult, every threat. This is a fight, and you're a fighter." Isabel was tough, but she knew me. She knew I didn't give up. That night in the hospital, I started writing. It wasn't just about the attack, it was about years of abuse. Judith belittling me at every opportunity, like when she brought up a scholarship at last year's Thanksgiving. Christopher, accidentally, tearing my military uniform and laughing. My father, always silent, letting it all happen. Every word I wrote was a step toward freeing myself. The pain in my shoulder reminded me how close I came to losing everything, but writing kept me focused. Sergeant Isabel stayed with me until I was discharged 2 days later. "Don't go back to that house alone," she told me, with that voice that left no room for negotiation. "Stay on base until we have a plan." I agreed. I didn't want to see my family. Not after what they did. But running away wasn't enough. I wanted justice. On base, I settled into the barracks. My fellow soldiers noticed the bandage but didn't ask. We soldiers know when to stay quiet. Isabel, however, didn't give me a break. "We're going to build a solid case," she said, bringing over a file. "We need evidence texts, photos, whatever you have." I remembered her advice. Evidence is your weapon, and I was going to use it. I went through my phone and struck gold. An audio recording from months ago when Judith cornered me in the kitchen. "If you don't contribute more, I'm kicking you out of this house," she said in a tone that was pure venom. I also had photos of my military uniform torn by Christopher during one of his tantrums and texts from him bragging about how he spent my father's money on gambling. Each file was a piece of the puzzle to take them down. Isabel introduced me to Javier, a lawyer who helped military personnel with cases like mine. He was a calm guy in his 30s, with glasses and a vibe that made you trust him. "Layla, this is serious," he said, reviewing my evidence. "Christopher's attack is assault with a deadly weapon. Your parents' attitude could get them in trouble for negligence. But there's more. The house is legally yours." I hadn't thought much about it. The house belonged to my biological mother, who died when I was a child. My father and Judith had claimed it, but the documents were still in my mother's name. Javier explained that as the heir, I had rights. "We can use that," he said. "If they want to fight, let them know they could lose everything." The plan started to form. I didn't just want justice for the attack, I wanted to sever their control over me. Isabel taught me to be methodical. "Think of it like a mission," she said. "Every move counts." So I wrote down everything I remembered. Judith calling me useless in front of her friends. Christopher coming home drunk and screaming that I was a burden. My father letting it all happen. Every memory hurt, but it made me stronger. A week later, my father called. "Layla, we need to talk," he said in that weak voice he used when Judith pushed him. "What happened with Christopher was a mistake, but you can't get the family into trouble." I felt a surge of rage. A mistake. I was stabbed, and he called it a mistake. "There's nothing to talk about," I said and hung up, but I recorded the call. Isabel had told me not to let anything slide. "Everything counts," she repeated. Christopher, meanwhile, carried on as if nothing had happened. I saw him on social media, at bars, laughing with his friends. Judith started spreading rumors, saying I had provoked Christopher, that I was exaggerating to get attention. Typical of her, twisting the truth. But I didn't care what they said. I had proof, and that was stronger than their lies. Javier organized everything. First, a restraining order, he said. That will keep them away while we prepare the big case. He also suggested pressing charges against Christopher for assault and filing a civil suit against my parents. This is for years of abuse, he said. We can prove a pattern. The idea of facing them in a courtroom made my nerves stand on end, but it also excited me. For the first time, I felt like I was in control. Isabel took me to an office on base to work without interruptions. We spent hours reviewing documents, writing statements. You're a soldier, Layla, she would tell me. This is a war, and you're going to win. One day, while looking through old things, I found a letter from my mother. I had saved it since I was a child, hidden in a box. She wrote about the house, about how she wanted it to be a place where I could grow up happy. Reading that broke me. The house wasn't just walls, it was the only thing I had left of her. Judith and Christopher had no right to it. I decided I wanted the house back. Not to live there immediately, but to make it mine, the way my mother would have wanted. Javier arranged a meeting with my family, saying it was for mediation. The idea was to confront them with the evidence, give them a chance to back down, and if not, go to trial. On the day of the meeting, my heart was pounding like I was on a mission. Isabel and Javier were with me. The meeting was in an office in Killeen. My father, Judith, and Christopher were on the other side of the table. Christopher had that arrogant smirk, as if it were all a joke. Judith looked at me with contempt, and my father avoided my eyes. As always. Javier began. We are here because of the events of November 27th and what will follow. He laid out the photos of the attack, the audio of Judith, Christopher's messages. Each piece of evidence was a blow. We have enough for charges against Christopher and a lawsuit against all of you, but we want to give you an opportunity to resolve this. Judith laughed. You think you can scare us, little girl, she said. But when Javier mentioned the house and my legal right to it, her face changed. My father looked up, surprised. Christopher fell silent. We don't want the house, Judith said, but her voice trembled. It was a lie. The house was all they had, and without it, they were finished. This isn't a drama, I said, speaking for the first time. I was stabbed, I was humiliated, and I'm done. You will sign a restraining order and renounce all claims to the house. Or we'll see you in court. My voice didn't tremble, even though I was a wreck inside. Christopher stood up, shouting that he wouldn't let some brat take anything from him. Javier cut him off. Sit down, Christopher. Your debts and your criminal record won't do you any favors. A judge won't be lenient. That shut him up. The meeting ended without an agreement, but it had shaken them. Judith and Christopher were nervous, and my father looked lost. As we left, Isabel gave me a pat on the shoulder. Well done, soldier, she said. This isn't over. That night in the barracks, I didn't sleep. I thought about the house, my mother, and how this was bigger than me. I was fighting for my future, and although I knew my family wouldn't give up easily, I also knew I wasn't going to back down. This was just the beginning. The following days were a race against time. Javier continued to organize the evidence, and Sergeant Isabel kept me focused. Don't get distracted, Layla, she would say. They'll try anything to get away with this. And she was right. One afternoon, I received a text from Judith. You don't know who you're messing with, it read, followed by a veiled threat about consequences if I didn't drop the case. I saved everything and sent it to Javier. Perfect, he said. This only strengthens our position. Christopher, for his part, didn't stay quiet. One night, a friend from the base told me he had seen him lurking near the barracks as if he were watching me. I wasn't scared, but it put me on alert. I took the matter to Isabel, who contacted the military police. "If he comes near, he'll be arrested," she said, "and that will only add to the charges." I felt like I was on a mission. Every move my family made was an opportunity to counterattack. Meanwhile, I continued to gather evidence. I found an old receipt in my email from when I paid for a repair at the house with my own money. Judith had said it was my responsibility because I lived there, but they never thanked me. I also unearthed texts from my father asking me not to bother Judith, as if I were the problem. Every piece of evidence was a brick in the wall I was building against them. Javier decided it was time to raise the stakes. "We're going to file the charges against Christopher and a civil suit against your parents," he said. "But first, we need a preliminary hearing. We'll see if they're willing to negotiate or if they're going all in." The idea of facing them in a courtroom made my nerves stand on end, but it also fired me up. I had spent years silently enduring their abuse. Now, I was going to speak, and they were going to listen. The hearing was in a small courthouse in Killeen, a gray building that looked more like an office than a place where people's fates were decided. Isabel was by my side in her impeccable uniform, and Javier carried a thick folder with our evidence. When I entered, I saw my family on the other side of the room. Judith's lips were pressed tight as if she were containing a barely controllable rage. Christopher was disheveled, with dark circles under his eyes, as if he hadn't slept in days. My father, true to form, stared at the floor. The judge, an older man with thick glasses, listened to Javier first. He laid out the case calmly: the screwdriver attack, the evidence of ongoing abuse, the negligence of my parents. He produced Judith's audio recording, the photos of my destroyed uniform, Christopher's texts. Every word was like a hammer blow. Then he presented the house documents, showing that I was the legal heir. "My client is seeking a restraining order and the transfer of the property," he said. "We will also be filing criminal charges against Christopher for assault." My family's lawyer, a nervous man who seemed unprepared, tried to defend them. He claimed the attack was a misunderstanding, that Christopher was drunk, and that I had exaggerated. Judith even had the audacity to speak up, saying I had always been difficult and was tearing the family apart, but the judge didn't seem impressed. When Javier played the audio of Judith threatening me, the room fell silent. Even my father looked up, as if he finally understood the gravity of it all. The judge called a recess for the parties to talk. Javier took us to a separate room. "They're nervous," he said. "They don't have much of a defense. I think we can push them to settle now." Isabel nodded. "Do it, Layla. Finish this." We returned to the courtroom, and Javier presented an offer. My family would sign the restraining order and renounce any claim to the house. In return, we would not pursue a full civil suit. If they didn't accept, we would drag them through a long trial with criminal charges and everything else we could throw at them. Judith tried to protest, but her lawyer quieted her. Christopher was pale, and for the first time, my father looked me in the eyes. He said nothing, but his expression was one of defeat. After a few tense minutes, they agreed. They signed the papers for the restraining order and relinquished the house. The judge approved it, and just like that, in a cold courtroom in Killeen, I won my freedom. But I didn't feel euphoric, only relieved. I had won a battle, but the physical and emotional scars were still there. When I returned to the house, it was no longer the battlefield I remembered. With the help of some friends from the base, I began to transform it. I painted the walls white, replaced the old furniture with simple pieces I bought with my salary. The room where Christopher attacked me was now a bright space with a plant in the window and a new desk. Every change was like erasing a part of them. The house no longer belonged to Judith, or my father, or Christopher. It was mine, and for the first time, it felt like a home. The scar on my shoulder became a reminder, not of the night that almost killed me, but of what I survived. I called it my Medal of Honor, something I earned fighting for myself. On base, I continued training, and months later, I was promoted to sergeant. Isabel was proud, and so was I. But I didn't stop there. I started talking to other soldiers, sharing my story. Many had been through similar things: toxic families, abuse that no one saw. With Isabel's support, I organized workshops on base where we taught others how to document abuse and seek legal help. I also gave talks at military conferences, telling how I turned my pain into strength. Every time I spoke, I saw eyes light up, soldiers who felt less alone. My story wasn't just mine, it belonged to everyone who was fighting in silence. One day, while painting the porch of the house, I received a letter. It was from my father. I didn't open it right away. A part of me feared what it would say. But when I did, there were no excuses, just one line. "I'm sorry, Layla." I didn't reply. I didn't need his apology. I had found my own peace, and that was enough. Now, the house is my sanctuary. I plant flowers in the yard, something my mother loved. Every day I wake up knowing I won something greater than a house or a court case. I won my life back. And as I continue to serve in the army, my mission is clear: to make sure no one else has to fight abuse alone. My voice, my scar, my story are weapons to illuminate the silenced stories of others. Yeah.